The door wasn't locked. I want you to understand that before anything else, the door was not locked. The meeting was on the calendar for 6:30. And when I knocked twice and heard nothing, I turned the handle the way I'd turned it 400 times before. And there was Marin, standing in front of the window in nothing but a black bra and her slacks half-zipped, silhouetted against the city grid 17 stories below. And she didn't flinch, didn't gasp, didn't grab for a blouse. She just turned, looked right through me with those pale green eyes, and smiled, slow and warm and deliberate, the way you'd smile at someone you've been expecting, and said, "Close the door, Jess. You're letting the cold in." I closed it from the outside. My hands were shaking so badly that I dropped my laptop on my own foot in the hallway and barely registered the pain. I stood there for 11 seconds. I counted them, because counting was the only thing keeping me from screaming. And then I walked back to my desk in the open-plan pit on the 14th floor and sat down and stared at a spreadsheet full of numbers I couldn't read. And I thought, what do I do now? What does a person do with that? I did nothing. I went home. I sat in my car in the company lot for 10 minutes with the key in the ignition and my forehead against the steering wheel, replaying the image on a loop I couldn't shut off. Not the undressing, the smile. That smile wasn't surprised, it wasn't embarrassed, it was satisfied, the way you look when a delivery arrives that you ordered 3 days ago. I drove home on autopilot, missed my exit, circled back, parked crooked. I ate half a bowl of cereal standing over the sink at 10 p.m. and told myself it was an accident, a bad coincidence, a moment I'd misread because I was tired. And she was just changing after a long day the way people sometimes do in offices when they think the door is locked, except the door wasn't locked and she knew I was coming, and I stopped myself. I got in bed. I pulled the comforter to my chin and stared at the ceiling fan making its slow, idiot circles, and I whispered, "Stop," to an empty room that didn't listen. My phone buzzed at 11:14. A text from Marin. "Sorry about earlier, lost track of time getting ready for a dinner. Hope it wasn't awkward. See you Thursday." That text should have reassured me. It was breezy, casual, the kind of message that frames an awkward moment as nothing. But something about it prickled. She'd sent it almost 5 hours after the incident. 5 hours of silence, and then a perfectly crafted little note that happened to create a written record of the event, her version of the event, before I'd told anyone about mine. I screenshotted it. I don't know why. Instinct, maybe. The instinct of a person who organizes things when she's afraid. It didn't stop for 3 months. By December, Marin Aldridge would try to destroy my career, my professional reputation, and very nearly my ability to work in my industry again. And the worst part, the part I still can't say without my voice going thin and strange, is that I almost let her. Not because she was stronger than me, because I kept believing there was an innocent explanation, long past the point where no innocent explanation was left. My name is Jess Liang, and at 27, I had exactly the career I'd spent 6 years building with the kind of quiet, teeth-gritted determination that doesn't make for interesting stories at parties. Associate brand strategist at Corwin and Haley, a mid-size agency in Charlotte, big enough that the clients were real, small enough that a junior strategist actually touched the work instead of formatting someone else's slides. I'd been there 14 months. My performance reviews were clean. My previous manager, a mild, methodical guy named Doug Reeves, who transferred to the Denver office that summer, had written in my last evaluation that I was the most organized hire we've made in 3 years, and possibly the most underestimated. I kept a screenshot of that line on my phone. It felt like proof of something. Then Doug left, and Marin came down from the New York office to take over our floor. and everything I thought I understood about my job started shifting under my feet in ways I couldn't name. She was impressive. I'll give her that honestly. 41, immaculate in the way that signals money spent on the right fabrics. And she had this presence. When Maren walked through the pit, conversations got quieter. Not because people were afraid, but because she commanded the kind of attention that felt voluntary. She remembered everyone's name from the first introduction. She brought pastries the second week. She told me, in our first one-on-one, that she'd specifically requested this floor because of the talent here. The first real change was the reporting lines. Normal enough, new leader, new structure. But she pulled me off the Bellhaven Hotels account, which I'd been running point on for 5 months and which was preparing for a major rebrand launch in Q1, and put me on something called internal brand audit. I asked what that meant. She said it was strategic positioning work that would report directly to her. In practice, it meant I was writing slide decks that no client would ever see, analyzing brand frameworks that nobody had requested, and sitting in a windowless conference room on the 16th floor instead of the pit where the actual work happened. "I need you closer to me on this," she said. "You're too talented to waste on hotel brochures." Closer to me. I wrote it off as corporate language, a compliment wrapped in a reassignment. I told myself to be grateful. The second change was the meeting times. She moved our one-on-ones to 6:15 p.m., not during business hours. Not when the floor was alive with keyboard clatter and phone calls and the coffee machine's asthmatic gurgling. At 6:15, when the open plan pit had emptied and the hallway lights had clicked to their dim half-setting, and the only sounds were the HVAC system breathing and the distant hum of a vacuum cleaner 3 floors down. I mentioned it to my friend Nina Chen in accounting, casually, the way you mention things you're trying not to worry about. Nina shrugged. "Maren's a night owl. She schedules everything late. Don't read into it." So I adjusted. You adjust, right? That's what you do when you're 27 and 14 months into the job that's supposed to be the foundation of everything that comes after. You tell yourself, this is just her style. This is just how she operates. And you show up at 6:15, and you sit in her office with the city going dark outside the window, and you answer her questions about brand architecture, while something in the back of your skull whispers that this doesn't feel right, and you shove that whisper into a drawer and lock it. The walk-in happened during the 3rd week of these late meetings. Here's what I didn't know on that Tuesday in October, the evening I opened Maren's door and saw what she wanted me to see. Her office had an automatic lock. Every door on the leadership floor, 16th and 17th, locked from the inside the moment it swung closed. It was a security feature installed 2 years before I was hired. To leave the door unlocked, you had to manually flip a small brass latch above the handle, a deliberate, physical act that couldn't happen by accident. I learned this because of Owen. Owen Zhao was second-tier IT support, the kind of quiet, meticulous person who knows every system in the building, the server architecture, the HVAC scheduling software, the badge access logs, the security camera routing, and gets thanked for none of it. He was 30. He wore the same 3 rotation of blue button-downs. And he had a way of appearing at your desk at exactly the moment your VPN was failing that felt like either coincidence or a minor superpower. 2 days after the walk-in, Thursday afternoon, the pit half empty because of a client off-site, Owen stopped by my desk carrying a network cable I hadn't requested. He set it down carefully, the way you set down something that isn't really the point. "Hey," he said, keeping his voice just under the ambient noise. "You went into Maren's office Tuesday evening, right? Around 6:30? My face went hot so fast I could feel it in my ears. The meeting was on the calendar. I knocked twice. "I know. I'm not asking about that." He glanced toward the hall, then back. The door access system flagged an anomaly. I check the logs every week. It's part of my maintenance rotation. Her office was manually unlocked at 6:22 p.m. Your meeting was at 6:30. She disengaged the automatic lock 8 minutes before you arrived and didn't re-engage it until 6:41, after you'd already left. I stared at him. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like trapped insects. "Why would you check that?" I asked. My voice came out smaller than I wanted. Owen picked up the cable, turned it over in his hands, put it back down. "Because 3 weeks ago, she asked me to pull the footage from the hallway camera on this floor. Said it was for a security audit. I pulled it and didn't think about it again until yesterday, when I realized she only asked for footage on the specific days you had evening meetings with her. 4 requests, 4 dates, all your meeting days." He left the cable on my desk. I never used it. It was never about the cable. That night, I sat in my car in the underground parking garage for 45 minutes with the engine running and the heater pushing hot air against my face, and I tried to make the math work in some direction that didn't terrify me. She manually unlocked the door. She knew exactly when I'd arrive. She was in a state of undress at precisely that time, and she'd been pulling surveillance footage of my movements on meeting days. I called Nina at 9 p.m. I could hear her TV in the background, some cooking competition, and the normalcy of it almost made me cry. "She set it up," I said. "The whole thing was a setup. She's gone. That's not your boss." That's what Nina said, and she meant it the way a friend means it. As in, the person doing this is not someone who deserves the authority of the word boss. And she was right. But she was also wrong, because Maren was very much still my boss. She owned my performance review. She controlled my project assignments. She wrote my reference letters. She had sole editing access to my personnel file. And she had the full institutional credibility of a senior leader who'd been with the company for 9 years, while I had 14 months and a desk in the pit. "What do I do?" I asked. Nina was quiet for a long time. "Document everything, starting now." I started the next morning. I created a shared Google Doc, accessible only to me and Owen, and I began logging every interaction with Maren. Date, time, what was said, who else was present. Exact quotes when I could remember them, paraphrases clearly marked when I couldn't. And that's when the second layer peeled back. I went through my sent folder and my inbox, and cross-referenced every email chain I'd been part of since Maren's arrival. What I found made my hands shake in a different way. Not fear this time, but something colder. Over the past 6 weeks, Maren had quietly removed me from 3 client-facing email threads. The Belhaven team had been asking for my input on their rebrand deck. I discovered this because the client's VP of marketing, a woman named Diane, who I'd built a good relationship with, CC'd me directly on a follow-up, confused about why I'd gone silent for 3 weeks. Maren had told the client I was transitioning to a new internal role and would no longer be their point of contact. Maren had told me the client had deprioritized the rebrand project until Q2. Both statements were lies. Clean, professional, perfectly calibrated lies that fit together like tongue and groove. She told the client I chose to leave. She told me the client chose to pause. Neither party had any reason to check the other's version. And if Diane hadn't happened to CC me on that follow-up, a casual, offhand CC that probably took her 2 seconds, I never would have known. The whole deception would have sat there, invisible and permanent, like a crack behind drywall. Then I checked the internal project management system. We used a platform called BaseRow. And I'd always been meticulous about logging my deliverables. and found something worse. 2 submissions I'd completed on time, a competitive landscape analysis and a creative brief for a pitch deck, had been marked by Marin as incomplete, returned for revision, employee notified. I had the original submissions with timestamps. They were finished. They were thorough. And the employee notified note was fiction. She'd never sent me a revision request. She just quietly logged them as failures. She was building a paper trail, a careful, patient, institutional record of a struggling employee, removed from client work for performance reasons, submissions consistently incomplete, requires close oversight and regular late-evening check-ins. Apparently, I was furniture with a Venmo account. That's what I said to Owen when I showed him the tracker. He didn't laugh. His jaw tightened, and he looked at me with an expression I'd never seen on his face before, not pity, but something closer to controlled fury. "Jess," he said, "I think you need to talk to someone outside this building." I didn't, not yet, because the next thing happened too fast, and it was the move that finally showed me the full shape of what Marin was building. On a Thursday, 11 days after the walk-in, Marin called me into her office. Door open, broad daylight. 2 other team leads visible through the glass wall, working at the long table in the conference room across the hall. Normal, safe, aggressively, conspicuously safe. She sat behind her desk, with reading glasses perched on her nose, and a printed document in front of her. And she said, in the gentlest voice I'd ever heard her use, "Jess, I need to discuss some concerns that have been raised about your professional conduct." My stomach dropped through 17 floors. "Several colleagues have observed that you've been spending a significant amount of time at Owen Zhao's workstation. I want to be sensitive about this, because I think highly of both of you. But there's a growing perception that the relationship may be interfering with your focus and your output quality. I'm required by policy to document this conversation and include it in your personnel file." I said, "Owen is IT support. I go to his desk when I have a technical issue. That's literally his job." "I understand completely, and I'm not making any accusations. I just want to be transparent with you about the conversation I'm required to have." She took her glasses off and set them on the desk. "I'm on your side, Jess. I hope you know that." She was so calm, so measured, so flawlessly positioned as the caring, procedurally rigorous manager reluctantly having a difficult but necessary conversation with a young employee who was struggling. And I sat there watching her performance, because that's what it was, a performance as precise and practiced as anything on a stage. And the full architecture of her plan clicked into place in my head with the sick, heavy clarity of a deadbolt turning. She wasn't building a case to fire me. She was building a case to make me unfireable by anyone, for her. And she was building a case to make any complaint I filed look like retaliation. Think about it. If I walked into HR tomorrow and reported the walk-in, the undressing, the unlocked door, the hallway camera surveillance, what would they find in my file? An underperforming employee, removed from client accounts, submissions consistently incomplete, developing an inappropriate workplace relationship with a colleague in another department. And now, suddenly, accusing her female boss of sexual misconduct. The narrative wrote itself, disgruntled, unstable, deflecting. The accusation would look like the last move of a person who knew the walls were closing in. The showing is Friday. The motion goes to HR Monday. Owen texted me that at 4:47 p.m. He'd overheard the office manager telling Marin's assistant that Marin had booked time with Lena Marsh, the HR director, for Monday at 10 a.m. to discuss a personnel concern on her team. He didn't need to spell out who the personnel concern was. 4 days, I had 4 days before Marin walked into HR and presented her curated version of reality. The documented concerns, the performance issues, the inappropriate relationship, the complete, airtight story of a troubled employee. And whatever version of events I offered afterward would sound like exactly what she'd predicted. A desperate, retaliatory fabrication. I sat at my kitchen table that night with my laptop open and the Google Doc glowing on the screen, and I made myself stop feeling and start thinking. Not like a victim, not like a scared 27-year-old, like a strategist, because that's what I actually was. Underneath the fear and the cereal dinners and the ceiling fan staring, I was a brand strategist, and what Marin had built was a brand, a narrative, a positioning, a carefully managed perception. And I knew how to take a brand apart. Friday morning, first move. Owen ran a full door access audit for the entire leadership floor. Not just Marin's office, the whole floor, legitimate maintenance task. Logged in his normal weekly rotation. The report showed that Marin's office door had been manually unlocked 7 times in the past 2 months. Every single instance corresponded to a scheduled evening meeting with me. No other employee's meeting times showed the same pattern. 0. He exported the report as a system-generated PDF with automated timestamps. Uneditable, unimpeachable. Friday afternoon, second move. I submitted a routine IT ticket requesting a version history report on my 2 flagged deliverables in Basro. Standard request, any employee could make it. The report showed clearly. I'd submitted complete files on their original due dates, and 4 days later, someone with admin-level access had changed their status to incomplete, returned for revision. The admin credential used was Marin's. Friday evening, third move. I exported every email thread I'd been removed from, including the one where Diane from Belhaven asked why I'd disappeared. Full headers, timestamps. Proof that I'd been actively excluded from work I was performing well on, contradicting the narrative that I'd been removed for performance reasons. Saturday morning, fourth move. The one that almost broke me. I searched LinkedIn for people who'd worked under Marin at the New York office, her previous team, and I found a name. Priya Kaur, Associate Brand Strategist. Same title, same level, same role. She'd left the company 11 months ago. Her LinkedIn profile said, taking time to explore new opportunities. Which, if you've spent any time in corporate America, you know is the professional equivalent of a scream muffled through a pillow. I sent her a message at 11 p.m. She responded in 4 minutes. I was wondering when someone would reach out. We talked on the phone Saturday night for an hour and 40 minutes. Priya's story was mine, nearly move for move, like Marin was running a playbook she'd refined through practice. The late meetings, Priya's were at 6:30, same time slot. The reassigned accounts, Priya had been pulled off a major retail client and put on an internal project that led nowhere. The doctored performance records, Priya's submissions, had been retroactively marked as incomplete in the same system using the same admin credentials. And the walk-in. Priya's version happened at a company off-site at a resort in the Hudson Valley. Marin had accidentally used the wrong locker room at the gym facility, an honest mistake, she'd said, laughing it off, and appeared partially undressed while Priya was alone. When Priya reported it, Marin produced a documented history of Priya's erratic behavior, interpersonal challenges, and difficulty accepting constructive feedback, a history that had been quietly assembled over weeks. The complaint was investigated. The investigation found insufficient evidence to support the allegation. Priya was offered a severance package. She picks people who are organized, Priya said. And I could hear something in her voice that was past anger, past grief, settled into a hard, clear knowledge. That's the thing nobody understands. She doesn't target the messy employees, the ones who show up late and forget deadlines. She targets the clean ones, the ones with spotless records, because a spotless record is worth destroying. When someone with a perfect file suddenly starts failing, it looks real. It looks like a decline. No one questions it. "How did it end?" I asked. Silence. The line hummed between Charlotte and wherever Priya was now. I resigned. I thought I was saving myself by getting out clean. But 3 months later, I found out she'd sent a reference letter to 2 recruiters I'd been in conversations with. The letter described me as having persistent challenges with interpersonal boundaries and professional judgment. I didn't know about it until a hiring manager told me off the record, because she felt bad. By then, the damage was done. Priya hadn't been fired. She'd been erased. Her career had been quietly, professionally, systematically poisoned. And she'd spent 6 months unemployed before landing a contract role at a nonprofit in Portland at roughly half her previous salary. "She reached into my career after I left the building," Priya said. "That's what people don't understand. Leaving isn't an exit. It's just a different room she can reach into. The reference letter follows you. The phone call to the recruiter follows you. The story she tells about you at the next leadership offsite follows you. You can't outrun it by quitting. You can only outrun it with proof." "I have proof," I said. "How much?" "Door logs, version histories, email threads, timestamps on everything." "Then don't let her finish the architecture. Don't resign. Don't wait." "She files Monday at 10 a.m. I said. "Then you file Sunday. And Jess, if you need a statement from me, you have one. I'll write it tonight." She said that without hesitation. A woman who'd been professionally destroyed by this person, who had every reason to stay quiet and protect the fragile new life she'd built, offered to put her name on a document and hand it to the same company that had failed her. I thought about courage and how it doesn't look the way movies say it does. It looks like a woman in Portland typing 3 pages into a notes app at 2 a.m. because someone she's never met asked for help. I called Lena Marsh, the HR director, at 8 a.m. on Sunday morning. I'd found her personal cell through the company emergency contact directory, which technically existed for building evacuations and active shooter situations, not for what I was about to do. But I figured if what was happening to me wasn't an emergency, nothing was. She answered on the 3rd ring. Her voice was cautious, a Sunday morning call from a junior employee she'd spoken to exactly once at an onboarding lunch 14 months ago. I said, "My name is Jess Liang. I'm on Marin Aldridge's team. I'm calling because I need to file a formal complaint, and I need it on the record before her meeting with you tomorrow morning, because that meeting is about me, and the version of events she's going to present is fabricated." Lena was quiet for a long time. I could hear birds through her phone and the distant sound of a child's voice, and I felt guilty for invading her weekend and terrified that she would tell me to call back Monday through proper channels, which would be too late. Then she said, "Can you send me documentation tonight?" I sent everything. The door access logs, the base row version history, the email threads with full headers, the screenshots from Priya's LinkedIn, and Priya's written statement. She'd typed it at 2 a.m. in a notes app on her phone, converted it to a PDF, and emailed it to me with the subject line, "For the record." It was 3 pages long, and it was devastating. I didn't sleep. I sat on my couch with every light in the apartment on and watched the sun come up, and I thought about Priya typing her statement in the dark at 2 a.m. And I thought about how many things have to go exactly right for someone like me to survive someone like Marin, and how many things went exactly wrong for Priya, and whether the only difference between us was that Owen happened to check a door log on a Thursday. Monday, 9:47 a.m., 13 minutes before Marin's scheduled meeting with HR. My phone rang. "Jess, it's Lena Marsh. Don't come in today." My heart stopped. "Not because you're in trouble," she said quickly. "Because I don't want you in the building while we address this. Can you work from home today and tomorrow?" "Yes." "Good. I've reviewed everything you sent. I want to be clear. There will be a formal investigation. It will be conducted by an outside firm. You are not the subject of that investigation. Do you understand what I'm telling you?" "Yes." "Okay. Someone from the investigator's office will contact you this week. In the meantime, don't discuss this with colleagues other than the people already involved. And Jess, you did the right thing calling me." I hung up. I set the phone on the kitchen counter. And then I sat down on the floor in my bathrobe and cried for 20 minutes straight. The ugly kind with snot and hiccuping and my neighbor's dog barking through the wall. And I am not embarrassed about that. 20 minutes was actually pretty restrained. The investigation took 3 weeks. And those 3 weeks were their own kind of hell, the slow, bureaucratic kind, where the crisis is technically being handled, but you can't see it moving and no one is allowed to tell you anything. I worked from home for the first 4 days. I sat in my apartment with my laptop on the kitchen table and did actual work. Brand audits, strategy decks, the job I was hired to do. Because the alternative was sitting on the couch refreshing my email every 90 seconds, waiting for a message that might not come. Nina brought me dinner twice. Owen texted me every morning. "Still here. Nothing new. Hang in." I was interviewed twice by the outside firm, once by phone, once on video. The investigator was a woman named Dr. Carla Mead, an employment attorney with a voice like a librarian and the questioning instincts of a prosecutor. She asked me to walk through everything chronologically. I did, using the Google Doc, and she stopped me 7 times to ask for specifics I didn't think mattered. The exact position of Marin's desk relative to the door, the wording of the text she'd sent that night, whether Owen's cable was Ethernet or USB. I didn't understand why until later. She was testing whether my account was consistent and detailed in the way real memories are, as opposed to the way fabricated stories are, which tend to be smooth and general and suspiciously free of irrelevant detail. I provided everything I had, organized chronologically in a shared drive with an index document. Because even in a crisis, I am still the person Doug called the most organized hire in 3 years. And it turns out that being that person is not a personality flaw. It is, in the most literal and unglamorous sense, a survival tool. Owen was interviewed. He provided the complete door access audit, the hallway camera request logs, and a written timeline of every anomalous IT request Marin had made. 2 other employees on Marin's floor, people I'd exchanged maybe 50 words with in 14 months, came forward independently during the investigation. Both reported that Marin had asked them pointed, probing questions about my personal life and my relationship with the IT department. Questions that had struck them as odd and uncomfortable, but that they'd dismissed at the time as harmless gossip. One of them, a project manager named Tess, sent me a message through the company chat after she was interviewed. "I'm sorry I didn't say something sooner." I told her she said it when it counted. That was true, and it was also the only thing I could think of to say. Priya's written statement was entered into the record. She also agreed to a 2-hour recorded phone interview with Dr. Mead. I don't know what she said in that interview. I know that afterward, she texted me a single line. It felt like putting a bone back in place. Marin was placed on administrative leave at the end of the 2nd week. I heard about it from Owen, who heard about it from the office manager, who'd been told to cancel all of Marin's meetings and redirect her mail. She never came back. I don't know whether she was terminated or resigned as part of a negotiated exit, and the company will never tell me. And I've made peace with that. Or at least, I've made peace with making peace with it, which is the closest I can get some days. The official announcement to the floor said, "Leadership transition." No further details. Marin's nameplate was removed from her office door on a Wednesday afternoon while I was at my desk pretending not to notice. Someone from facilities came with a small screwdriver and took it down in about 40 seconds. 14 months of terror, disassembled in less than a minute. A new floor manager named Dara Washington started 2 weeks later. She was in her mid-30s, direct, funny in a dry way that caught you off guard. She scheduled one-on-ones at 2 p.m. Her office door had a glass panel in it. At our first meeting, she leaned back in her chair and said, "Tell me what you're good at and what you want to work on. I'll read your file later. Right now, I want to hear it from you." I said Bellhaven. She said, "Done." And I believed her immediately, which I think surprised me more than anything else in this story. The speed at which trust can rebuild when the person asking for it actually deserves it. Here's what I need to tell you. Because the story is finished, but the point of it isn't. And the point is the part that matters. Marin didn't get as far as she did because she was smarter than me. She was smart, meticulously, architecturally smart, and I can acknowledge that now with the detachment of someone standing outside a building that's no longer on fire. The system she built was elegant. The paper trail, the isolation, the counter-narrative preloaded for any complaint I might file. It was a machine designed to run on silence, and silence was the one resource I was providing in abundance. She succeeded for 3 months because she understood something fundamental about how decent people process power. When someone above you does something wrong, your first instinct is not to fight. Your first instinct is to explain it away. It was an accident. It was a misunderstanding. She was just changing and forgot the door. You rearrange your understanding of reality to preserve the version where your boss is basically reasonable. And you just need to try harder and be more accommodating. And every time you do that, every time you give them the benefit of a doubt they haven't earned, you hand them another week to build the architecture around you. I almost lost my career, my professional record, and my future ability to be hired in my field. Not because I lacked evidence. The evidence was there from week 3. I almost lost everything because I couldn't make myself believe what the evidence was telling me. I wasn't scared of her power. I was scared of being wrong about it. That's the sentence I keep returning to, because I think it's true of so many situations that have nothing to do with mine. You're not afraid to act. You're afraid to act and then discover you overreacted. And now you're the difficult one, the dramatic one, the one who made a big thing out of nothing, and the story becomes about your instability instead of their behavior. That fear is rational. That fear is understandable. And that fear is the only environment in which someone like Marin can operate, because the machine she builds runs on your silence and your self-doubt and your willingness to give her one more week, one more benefit, one more quiet adjustment. Don't give it to them. Owen still works at the company. We get coffee every other Wednesday. He has never once asked for credit, and I have never once stopped giving it. Priya took a full-time communications director role at the nonprofit in Portland. She texted me last month to say that she finally stopped flinching when her new boss asks to meet one-on-one, and that it only took 8 months. I told her 8 months sounded about right. I got the Bellhaven account back. The rebrand launched in February. It won a regional Addy. Diane sent me flowers. I got my performance records corrected, every falsified entry removed, every real submission restored to its original status. The HR system now shows exactly what happened. 14 months of clean, consistent, well-documented work, interrupted by a period of deliberate sabotage that was identified and reversed. My file is clean. My record is clean. My name is clean. And I got something that doesn't show up in any file or any system, something I carry in a place no admin credential can access. I learned that documentation is not paranoia. It is the exact, unglamorous, unsexy mechanism that separates a story someone believes from a story someone can prove. I learned that the door you're afraid to knock on, HR, legal, the person with the authority you think you don't deserve to bother, that door exists specifically for the moment you're living in, not for a future moment when you're more sure, not for a calmer time when you've had a chance to think. Now, while the evidence is fresh and the architecture is still under construction, and I learned that the quiet person who shows up at your desk with a cable you didn't ask for, the one who noticed something wrong and chose to say it out loud when saying nothing, would have been easier and safer and perfectly justifiable. That person might be the only reason you survived the thing you haven't named yet. Not every rescue is dramatic. Some of them look like a blue button-down and an Ethernet cable and a sentence that begins with, "Hey, I noticed something. I need to ask you something. And I need you to be honest, not with me, but with yourself. Have you ever stayed quiet about something a person with power over you did? Not because you didn't know it was wrong, but because you were more afraid of being seen as the problem than of being in one. And the person who finally made you feel safe enough to say it out loud, the Owen, the Nina, the Priya who picked up the phone at 11 p.m., have you ever told them what that moment meant to you? If this story shook something loose, subscribe. I'll be here tomorrow with another one.